huge earthquake at Etna. Suddenly the tremors fell. Something really strange happened. Then this earthquake, Sicily's cracking open, but we might have triggered a fault line at the dangerous crack that is falling into the sea. Mount Etna is falling into the sea. And if this happens, we have a Blutton situation just underwater with a tsunami that will be devastating. The height of that tsunami, 100 feet plus, absolutely crazy. Is this what has just started there? I'm not even worried about the eruptions, but the signals were so strange. If you look at the graph, we need to talk about this. Very mysterious. I looked into this for you. Sicily is cracking open, and you see the images. I mean, we see this all over the news. And guys, something happened, and Etna did this. Mount Etna, something strange actually just happened at Mount Etna. If you look at that graph, because that is really, really crazy. I've never seen something like this happen there. It appeared basically to happen when it seemed that the eruption that has been going on at Etna seemed finally to be calming down. So Etna, you know, has been erupting for days now, has been feeding lava across the mountain, repeatedly producing ash and causing, we have to say, extraordinary disruption at the Catania airport. But by this morning, guys, this overall picture, it finally seemed to be improving. The volcanic background tremor of Mount Etna had dropped. The lava field was beginning to cool. The explosive activity had weakened. Even the aviation alert was being reduced. So it looked as though Etna may finally be running out of energy. And then, poof, the signals changed. You see it in the curve. This is really crazy, very, very quickly. So at about 8:20 UTC time, instruments that were monitoring Etna, they absolutely suddenly detected a rapid increase in volcanic tremor. I mean, that alone would already be interesting because you'd be wondering, whoa, what is it doing, right? But what happened over the next 2 hours then is the part that blew my mind a little bit, and we want to pay very close attention to in this video. So guys, listen to this. The tremor just not only, I have to say, didn't simply increase. There was something else. The source moved. So for a brief period, the signal was suddenly being generated beneath the northeast crater of Etna at a height of roughly 2,000 meters. That's 6,560 feet above sea level. And guys, I say that because we know Etna has a flank that is already cracked that is sliding into the sea. And if this thing falls at once, we're talking like catastrophic tsunami. You maybe have seen my videos about that. I'll put it in the end screen again because you have to see that. But because today we need to talk about this earthquake because it was a strong earthquake, and you've seen the images in the background of these cracks. That has a reason. So I'm saying it moved approximately 8:40 UTC time, right when the tremor reached its maximum. The northeast crater produced a short explosion. Column of ash rose from the crater and then was carried south. So now you might want to ask, okay, so it's switching eruption location, or what is this? But, here it comes. At almost exactly the same time, something else was happening that you necessarily couldn't see by just looking at Etna. The monitoring network began detecting powerful pressure waves that were traveling through the atmosphere. I'm talking infrasound. So beginning at around 8:26 UTC, the INGV detected a succession of at least 20 high-amplitude infrasonic events that were originating from the northeast crater. So for roughly half an hour, that part of Etna became suddenly extremely noisy. Tremor rising beneath it, repeated infrasound events, and then an explosion, and then poof, the signal collapsed. So by approximately 9 UTC, the volcanic tremor had fallen all the way back into the low range. So infrasound activity disappeared. What was happening? burst at the northeast crater was over almost as quickly as it had begun. And if that had been the end of today's story, well, this could simply have been interpreted as another short, like, explosive phase during the final stages of an eruption. But guys, Etna wasn't finished, and that is why you're seeing this video. That's why I made it, because 84 minutes later, the mountain moved, we have to say. The volcano moved in an entirely unexpected and different way. What am I talking about? 12:24 local time, a magnitude 3.9 earthquake struck the northern side of Etna near Lingua Glossa. Magnitude 3.9. If you're not versed with volcanoes, for you doesn't sound enormous. People in California will say we have that every day. No, guys. This is a volcano. This is different. So this earthquake, it was extremely shallow. We have to say extraordinary shallow. And the epicenter was only about 1.2 kilometers, so roughly 3/4 of a mile beneath the surface. So, and we have to look at the location of that earthquake, because that is extremely important as well. The earthquake appeared right in the area of the Pernicana fault system. So was this the volcano? Was that the fault system? Did the volcano trigger that? Or is there something else going on? Because we do know Etna is not like any other normal volcano. This is a very complex system. I've made a video about this recently. The shaking was strong enough to leave a visible mark on the mountain. The road leading towards Piano Provenzana fractured. You see the images. Cracks opened through the pavement in the Ragabo area. They did evacuate. Restaurants nearby were evacuated as a precaution, and authorities moved in very quickly to inspect that damage. So fortunately, we do not have any reports of injuries or like major building collapses in the initial assessment, but those cracks, they're telling us that this wasn't simply an earthquake, guys, that was recorded by distant instruments. The movement of this rupture has reached the surface, and we see that very, very clearly. And that's the very interesting part that kind of like is really important in what happened today, because it really changes the story from the eruptive phase to this. Etna's eastern flank, I mentioned it, is slowly sliding towards the Ionian Sea. And the Pernicana system forms the northern boundary of that unstable sector. So is this earthquake a result because more of the flank cracked and is actually moving towards the sea? This can be very, very dangerous. INGV researchers have described it almost like a rail guiding part of that movement. So even more importantly, research has shown that movement along the Pernicana does not occur with perfect regularity. So it can respond to episodic changes in the volcano, inside the volcano, including the movement and the pressurization of magma. So when magma is rising up and it increases the pressure inside the plumbing system of the volcano, that pressure actually can push against that eastern flank. Do you know what I'm saying? So, and then the Pernicana fault can respond to this. So that relationship became particularly clear during Etna's 2003 till 2002, 2003 eruption, because during that crisis, we had a magma intrusion, we had flank movement and activity along the Pernicana system, and that became closely intertwined. So, of course, I'm not saying that the 3.9 that just happened today is announcing another 2002 style eruption or anything. There is no current evidence to say that. But the location of this earthquake, we cannot simply dismiss this as like meaningless background noise because of that dangerous crack. So you know what happens if a whole mountain flank falls into the water. some of it is underneath the water, and underwater landslide, sudden displacement of water. Guys, we've seen it, for example, in Alaska, in Norway, when the fjords, when the mountains fall in there. We've seen it on land, Blatten, when a lot of amount of debris and rock is displaced. Imagine this is Blatten's coming down in the water and this displaces water. We're talking tsunami, terrifying heights of tsunami. So that earthquake, do not dismiss it as meaningless, especially if we see, especially because of what Etna was doing immediately before it. And there's one more detail that basically prevents me from giving you a very easy explanation for this. The earthquake did not cause the volcanic tremor to collapse. Listen to this. This collapse alone is strange. The timing doesn't work. Tremor dropped around 9 o'clock UTC. Earthquake didn't occur until 10:24 UTC, about 84 minutes later. So something changed inside of the volcano first. So then the Pernicana fault moved. That distinction is extremely important. So the obvious question now is whether those two events were connected through the same change in stress inside that volcano. And right now, we just don't know the answer. We don't know the answer. But there are some clues. So listen to this. I'm going to give you the clues. After that brief migration towards the northeast crater of Etna, the tremor source shifted back towards the Voragine area. The peak of Mount Etna has several craters, right? The powerful infrasound burst stopped. Etna's tilt measurements showed the earlier deformation basically returning towards baseline. So, and we have GNSS instruments. They were showing an increasingly established, actually deflationary trend across the volcano. Inflation is always like, woo. Deflation is like, oh yeah, maybe it's coming down. So really, I want to make this clear again. Deflation means the volcanic edifice is, broadly speaking, losing pressure rather than building pressure or continuing to inflate. So that's one of the reasons I would be very careful about what interpretation we're giving for today's earthquake as an evidence that Etna is preparing for some enormous new eruption. I'm not really worried about an enormous new eruption. What worries me is the crack, the cracking flank. That widely cracked, huge amount of mass. At this moment, several important monitoring parameters point in the opposite direction. They suggest a system is releasing pressure when it comes to the volcano. But again, listen to this because of this situation is so unusual. The eruption hasn't completely stopped. So while all of this was happening, the INGV teams confirmed that lava was still coming out of Etna. So we know this from Iceland. If it's deflating, shows the magma chambers emptying, right? Effusive activity continued from vents at approximately a height of 2,750 meters and 1,990 meters. So the most advanced lava front had reached a height of around roughly 1,600 meters. That's approximately 5,250 feet. So the area is called Rocca Muzara, where it was basically overlapping earlier lava flows. And if we look at the summit, there was only a weak ash emission that remained after that explosion at the northeast crater. So we're dealing right now with a volcano that simply just didn't switch off or something. It's still erupting, while several of its monitoring signals are absolutely rapidly changing. So we have two possible, in my opinion, interpretations for that. Etna may simply be entering the end of its final eruptive episode. Magma's leaving the system, pressures is basically falling, volcanic edifice is deflating, tremors declining, residual lava basically continues to drain from vents that are already open. And the sudden change in stress that is associated with that process may have helped that, may have helped trigger movement along the Pernicana fault. If that's what's happening, guys, today's earthquake may actually be part of the ending of this eruption rather than the beginning of something larger. But still, what's going on at the crack? How did that flank move? Is it getting closer to failure? The complete failure is what's so dangerous. If it gradually continues to come down, it won't displace such a big amount of water. But there's another possibility that we have to watch very, very closely. That is scenario number 2. We do know that the pressure inside a volcano doesn't always disappear like evenly, right? Uniformly, we could say. The plumbing system that is beneath the Etna volcano is extraordinarily complicated, maybe like no other volcano on this earth. So we have magma and volcanic gases that are moving through different conduits like fractures, storage zones. We have multiple craters at different heights. So one part of the system can depressurize while another part is changing. And that brief moment of the tremor source towards the northeast crater is therefore so important to watch very, very closely, because for approximately 40 minutes today, that crater suddenly became the focus of a completely different type of activity than what the other eruption was doing. So the tremor arrived there, infrasound arrived there, the explosion occurred there, and then the whole episode abruptly faded. Poof, gone. Whoo! That is not proof of magma migrating like into a new eruptive pathway, but it is a change. It definitely is. And when we're dealing with a volcano like Etna that is so heavily monitored, and if that thing changes its behavior so quickly, so what is so important is what's the next signal or the next signals, right? The next ones are even more important than the ones that have already happened. So if the volcanic tremor stays low, the infrasound remains absent, and the deflation continues, the case for this eruption winding down becomes considerably stronger. But if the tremor begins climbing again, especially if the source migrates back towards the northeast crater, then our interpretation of what's going on changes dramatically, right? If we have new shallow earthquakes that begin clustering along the Pernicana system or towards Etna's northeast rift, that would catch my attention the most. That would deserve the most of the attention. I said it. This is for me more important than if there's a new, or whether there's a new eruption coming. And if the current deflation suddenly reverses into renewed like land rise inflation, that will also be another important change, right? But none of this has to happen. But I told you now the signals that can tell us whether today's events represent basically Etna is releasing its remaining pressure, or is he only rearranging it? And there's one more strange piece of timing here. And while Etna may rearrange its plumbing system, again, the crack. What happened? What happened? We don't know. And the timing, I mean, all that happened basically at a point when the authorities started to relax. They started to relax restrictions after basically days of a volcanic eruption. Very, very interesting. I'll monitor this for you guys. It's absolutely important. If you want to know about Etna's flank, check the video in the end screen. But if you want to know about this crazy earthquake, magnitude 7.7, guys, highly densely populated area, and volcano, no, they have volcanoes too, and one erupted. But tsunami, check out this video if you want to know what's going on in Spain. Crazy earthquake, 5.2 with damages. Granada, near the famous Alhambra. Check that out too. I mean, subscribe, go to my channel start page, go to videos, go to recent. There you can binge watch them all. I hope I see you in a second, guys. Stay safe. A lot is going on right now. Bye.